Hi, everyone, and welcome to another interview for Emotional Autoimmunity. I'm Kerry Jeffrey, and today I have the absolute pleasure of talking to Kat Woods, all the way over in America. So we've had fun working out our time differences and getting this all going. So I know you're really going to enjoy what Kat has to say today. So before we get started, I'll just let you know a little bit about Kat. So Kat Woods is the blogger behind hopehealcook.com, where she shares her passion for seasonal paleo cuisine, natural health and holistic living. She is also the creator of Chronically Kat, a comic about hardship and humour of living with chronic illness. And Kat received her culinary arts degree at Le Cordon Bleu Culinary Institute in Oregon, and she currently lives in Seattle, Washington with her husband and their 3 fur babies. So welcome, Kat. It's so lovely to have you join me today.
Yes, it's great to be here. Thank you for this opportunity and for working with me and finding a time that worked for both of us on opposite ends of the planet.
Yes, it can sometimes be challenging, but thank goodness for time converters. They're just so good. So, Kat, can you tell us what health issues do you have and how do they affect your day-to-day life?
So I've had health problems ever since I was a child, and looking back, I'm not really sure what came first, the Lyme disease or the autoimmunity. Right now, I'm dealing with both autoimmune symptoms and chronic Lyme disease, which also involves a number of what are called co-infections. So along with that, I have a number of food intolerances, and I have some other symptoms that fit diagnoses like fibromyalgia and POTS syndrome, things like that. So a lot of my life is impacted by these various symptoms. I've also struggled in the past with eating disorders and with mental health problems. So when it comes to healing, I've really had the opportunity to explore a lot of different modalities. And I'm at a place now where I can feel grateful for that, because from this experience, I know that I can share with so many other people who can relate to at least one of the things I've gone through.
Absolutely. And what would you say are the daily, weekly challenges that can come along, just to give people a little bit more of an idea of the sort of things that you have to deal with?
Well, diet is a big thing for me. My food choices are fairly restrictive, and that means that I need to do all of my cooking from scratch. Thankfully, I love it, but it's a lot of work, which brings me to the other issue I have, and that's of chronic fatigue. I'm tired throughout the day. I've made a lot of progress with my health, and I have more energy than I've had in years, but I still have to be really careful with pacing. And on any given day, I can't usually do everything that I would want to do. So I kind of have to juggle. If I need to, let's say, cook all my meals, well, maybe laundry has to wait. Or if I want to take a yoga class, well, then maybe I need my husband to cook dinner. So there's a lot of choice making that I have to do throughout each day as I budget my energy.
Mm. And that's exactly what it's like. And I think that's a difficult concept for people to wrap their mind around, that you've got this limited amount of energy that can change on a daily basis without any prior warning. Like, we were going to start our broadcast a little bit earlier, but I've sort of woken up this morning and I'm having a bit of what I call a slow day, which I haven't had for a while, which just means I feel quite lethargic, I feel quite foggy, and it takes me a while to sort of kickstart myself into action. So I just know that today I'll have to be a little bit more careful. So as people living with chronic disease, that's something we really have to manage, isn't it? That idea that, okay, today is this sort of day, today's that sort of day, and so this is what I think I can do, and that might have to go. And that can be difficult, can't it?
Absolutely. It's very difficult. One of the hardest things for me is I used to be the sort of person who would wake up and have a list of to-dos and feel really good about being able to get them all done. And that's not the reality that you have when you have chronic illness. You wake up and you have to really check in. How am I feeling? What signals is my body giving me? Do I have aches, more fatigue, brain fog? And based on where I'm at on that particular day, then I need to sort of reschedule what I can do. And it can change at any moment. Maybe I think I can do something in the evening, but by afternoon I realize I need to rest the rest of the day. So a lot of minute by minute acceptance and flexibility.
Yes, and the plans have to change sometimes. Like, for example, last night I was supposed to go to a course that I'm doing at one of our local colleges on WordPress, and I just knew at about 5 o'clock that it just wasn't going to happen. You know, I just knew I was probably going to be in bed by 8:30, and it just wasn't going to be possible for me to get dressed and go out and drive and sit in a classroom for 3 hours. It just wasn't happening. So like you say, I used to be one of those people who, you know, you've got to get things done, but now I've really had to adjust that, and I don't stress anymore if I can't do it. Before I would have thought, oh my God, I've paid for that course, now I'm going to be a week behind, and I just think I can't do it. That's all there is, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So do you think you have to find a lot more acceptance, Kat?
Absolutely. You have to find acceptance of not only where you're at, but of the fact that you might not be able to do what you had planned, that you might have to let somebody know that you can't come and they might be disappointed, that you might not have the follow through that you'd like. There's a lot of things, and I think the acceptance and sort of that feeling of disappointment and some of that grief can come hand in hand and is a very important part of the healing process for me. I did have to grieve in order to have acceptance that this is what my life looks like now. And now, like, as you said, that I can let these things go, I don't stress. And I can still have a great day, even if I have to tweak it.
Exactly. And Kat, you said just then that you had to grieve those changes and those things. What do you feel was the hardest part for you emotionally about coming to terms with your illness? Because it is a big adjustment, isn't it?
I would say grief and fear. I had a lot of fear around what will my life be like? Will I get better? Even some of the really, really scary fears like, will I heal? Will I live into my 30s, which I have, because I've been sick since childhood. There's some really palatable fears that can grip you when you've been living with chronic illness, especially severe illness or multiple diagnoses. Learning to be able to sit with that fear and have unconditional love for myself when I'm scared was so powerful. And it's not an ongoing process of being able to hold, you know, the worries or the anxieties that might come up if a symptom arises, if there's a flare up, something like that. And then, yes, grief. Grieving at the things that I've missed out on over the years, and having grief around the things that I'm not doing right now. So what comes in there is gratitude. I found that's been really helpful, like a balm for both the fear and the grief. It's just to focus on all the good things right now.
That's so true. I think even at my sickest, what really helped me, you know, when I was sort of laying in bed, really worrying that I was going to die, which was a real possibility, just being able to connect to looking at the sky. You know, there's something just being able to connect to something and feel grateful, like, well, you know, at least I can stay in bed, which is good, and the bed is comfortable, and just finding something to be grateful for in that, because, you know, you can't see it exactly on my wall, but the wall I'm sitting on, it has choose love, because during my illness, it was also quite a spiritual experience for me, which sounds strange, but I think being so suddenly ill for me triggered a lot of things. And it is, like you said, that time where you don't know what's going to happen. You really don't know what's going to happen to you, and the future is not certain. And so all that kept coming to me through that time is there are two primary emotions that drive the world: fear and love. Hate is not the opposite of love. Fear is the opposite of love. And in all of those moments, I would just say to myself, what are you going to choose, Kerry? Are you going to choose fear, or are you going to choose love? And when I chose love, in that moment, love for myself, love for my body, love for whatever I could see, which comes with gratitude and acceptance, that was one of the mindset things that really helped me get through those times.
I'm really resonating so strongly with what you're saying. I'm almost tearing up. I have the same practices. When my neurological symptoms come on really strong, I am gripped with terror. And what I tell myself is, I choose love. That becomes my mantra. I choose love. And so I just breathe in this experience of profound mental and physical suffering, and breathe out just love and peace. And I found that to be very helpful, even if it doesn't pull me out of that experience so that I feel all warm and fuzzy, it at least grounds me, because it is a very groundless experience to be suddenly ill. And I do think
Absolutely.
that it's a powerful opportunity for spiritual work. I agree with that as well.
Yes, I think there's a spiritual side to going through illness. And I'm actually reading a book at the moment called Close to the Bone, and it talks about exactly that experience. The experience of chronic illness or sudden illness or dangerous illness is a journey into the underworld of yourself, and where the known suddenly becomes the unknown and nothing is certain anymore. And it's a really interesting read. But yes, definitely that emotional side of illness, I think, is even more important than the physical side, because as I was saying to you before we started the live broadcast, that I could read the facts till the cows came home. There was so much information about the physiological side of my illness, but that wasn't what I wanted to know. I wanted to know, how do you live with it? How do you come to terms with the fear? How do you deal with the pain? How do you adjust your life? How do you get right with it emotionally? So it really is a journey of the body, mind, and soul, this chronic illness thing.
Yeah, my healing has absolutely been physical, but also the emotional, the spiritual, the energetic. It's all of it. When I used to come at my physical illness with just physical treatments alone, I never made very good progress. I would always get stuck. And when that happens, I learned that I really did have to look at what my thoughts were, what emotional affects my body was holding frequently. I had to look at my childhood. I had to look at my fears, my resentments. That's actually been as important as the antimicrobials and the anti-inflammatory diet.
Absolutely. I think, how we see ourselves and how we feel about ourselves and our situation has a huge importance on the physical impacts of our health. So just on that topic, Kat, what positive changes or insights have you had as a direct result of your illness?
I think the biggest shift for me was when I decided I was going to love myself. I used to hate myself. I was so filled with self-loathing. And when I first started to really tune into my thoughts, what I noticed was that they were cruel. They were vicious, heartbreaking, ugly thoughts that I just had on loop in my head. Kat, you're worthless, you're ugly, nothing you do is any good, you're so stupid. I used to tell that to myself all day long, and I didn't even realize it. When I did realize it, I made a commitment to at least try to say nice things more than harsh things. And it was not easy. It's taken years for me to quiet that mean voice. But that was when things really shifted for me, when I decided I was just going to love myself, that I deserve that love, and that everything I do around healing is going to be an act of love. Kat, I'm going to make you this meal because I love you. I'm going to take this detox bath because I love you. I'm going to do a little bit of gentle yoga or take a nap because I love you. Having that intention, that was probably the biggest thing. There have been other game changers since, but I think it really started there.
Oh, look, I absolutely agree. I do lots of professional work with people on exactly those issues. And most of us in the world go around hating ourselves and criticizing ourselves because we're not taught how to do it any other way. And what I can say to my clients is to try to get them to understand the concept of it is just imagine you could externalize all of those thoughts into a person who followed you around all day saying those things. Like, would you want them around, or would you be getting a restraining order against them to get them out of your life? And most people say, no, if that was an actual person following me around all the time saying those things, I wouldn't put up with it. I'd do something to stop it. So it's really understanding that what you're doing is bullying yourself. You're constantly bullying yourself. And when you're sick, that is the absolute last thing you need, because when you're sick, even more than ever, you need your own love and compassion and support and understanding and care. So I think that's absolutely brilliant that you came to that realization and that you've done so much inner work on that, because that's a huge thing to overcome. So that's fantastic, Kat.
Yeah, thank you. That's been one of the hardest challenges, is really committing to loving myself, even though I'm sick, even though I can't have the follow through I want, or, you know, maybe my husband has to do the dishes a whole lot and I can feel bad about that I can't contribute, whatever arises, to just say, hey, that's okay, still loved.
Absolutely. So dealing with this from childhood, you must have had so much to do with doctors and the medical profession through your life. So what advice could you share about dealing with the medical profession that's been the most helpful or empowering for you?
I think empowering is a key word. I needed to get to a place where I could feel empowered in my relationship with my health professionals. Part of that means really feeling out who I want to work with, because it's a relationship, and it's an intimate relationship to be having someone help with your healing. Whoever I'm working with, let's say like a doctor, they've gone through years of medical school, but I've gone through years of living as me in this body. So the knowledge I have is important. And it's important for me to be in a healing relationship with somebody who will respect the input I have on the process. The other thing that's been really important for me personally is I choose practitioners who demonstrate that they're able to be compassionate in holding my experience. The last doctor I got, I knew she was the right one, because out of everybody I emailed in looking for a specialist, she was the only one who responded with, "It sounds like you're really hurting. I'm sorry to hear that." And that was important, because I knew she was looking at me as a person who was having a difficult experience and not just a lab sheet. So I would say trust your instinct. Don't be afraid to speak about what you're going through, and make sure you're working with somebody that you feel comfortable with, because it's a relationship. You know, you can dump your doctor if it's not working out.
Absolutely. And I think because there's been that traditional view of the doctor almost as that godlike, powerful figure that has all of the answers, that a lot of people I sort of don't really understand, as you said, that it is a relationship. And like any other relationship, whether it's your hairdresser or your mechanic or anybody else that you have a professional relationship with, it is a relationship, and you need to deal with someone who's going to look after you and see you as a person who has an input. So a relationship, as you said, it's a two-way process. So if somebody's got a doctor who is not listening to them, is not listening to their symptoms, is telling them that they're fine, even though the person sitting there clearly knows that isn't the case, then it's time to shop around for another doctor, and don't be frightened to interview one. I mean, that's exactly what I did after my initial diagnosis. I knew my doctor was not listening and had no knowledge or no interest in my condition and no knowledge about helping me. And if I'd stayed with him, I know I would have died. I know I would have died. And when I went to see my new doctor, I actually said, you know, I'm looking for someone who will listen to me, who will work in partnership with me. I have very clear goals and plans that I would like to see to achieve for my health, but I need someone who's going to work with me and support me. And she was willing to do that, and she's lovely and compassionate. So, you know, you're absolutely right. It is a relationship, and everybody deserves the right to have that sort of relationship, and keep looking until you find one. I think that's great advice. Thanks, Kat.
Yeah. An interview. Don't be afraid to interview. I was nervous about that, and then I had to remember I'm going to be investing a whole lot of money into this person. All of my treatments are not covered by insurance. So I really want to make sure it's the right person, and I have the right to do that and to be thorough and to ask good questions and to make an informed and empowered choice about who I have that relationship with.
For sure, because everything that your doctor's doing, whether they're giving you new medication or treatment or something, you're the person paying the price for that, good or bad. It's going to impact on you. So I think definitely the onus is on us as the consumers of medicine to be very informed consumers, and to really be assertive about getting the right treatment as much as possible. Even though that can be a difficult thing to do when you're sick, it's still something that needs to be done. So has having your illness changed the way you feel about your body, Kat?
In response to having illness, I've changed the way I feel about my body. I have decided that I am going to be amazed by my body and what it is able to do on any given day. That it still functions as much as it does, that it fights this illness and these infections 24/7, all the time, just for me. And I've decided to interpret that as amazing love. I used to hate my body. And when I first got sick, I hated it even more. I was just cursing every organ, every system for being ill. I really blamed my body. Now I've shifted that. And I'll talk to my organs sometimes, like my liver. I call her Liv, and it's just like, hey, Liv, how you doing? You're so awesome. Keep going. So I've definitely changed the relationship I have with my body. And I might not have had it not been for illness.
No, I after I saw my second doctor and I was driving back, when she actually reinforced to me that I was dangerously ill and to consider myself disabled and that I could die, and that, you know, I had to really take what I had seriously and understand my predicament. And I can remember stopping on the way home and I just had to have a bit of a cry because I was so in awe of my body. Like that, you know, there was my liver only functioning 50%, my kidneys functioning 50%, pretty much zero thyroid output, and yet my body was still going. And I was like, wow, you are absolutely amazing. And that's how I think of my body now. There's no issues left with my body anymore. You know, how it is, the weight that it has, the weight that it's whatever it's doing, I just know that my body is working 24/7 to heal what's going on, and that takes a tremendous amount of energy and dedication. So absolutely, I agree. I think having a chronic illness can really transform your relationship with your body into a new appreciation of just how miraculous it is and what it can do.
Truly, I've had multiple organs more or less cease working. I almost died as well. There was a couple of years where my things were very touch and go in my mid-20s. So the fact that I am here and breathing and digesting and, you know, I can walk, all of these things, because my body kept working, fighting, detoxing, healing. It's pretty amazing. I agree. Yeah, not worried about the weight. Now I'm just like
yeah. Yeah, woohoo, I can walk around the block. It's fantastic. Thank you, body. So, Kat, what people to understand about your illness?
Can you say it again? It cut out.
Yeah. What would you most like people to understand about your illness?
This is a tough one. I think, unfortunately, it would be that I did not choose this or in any way do this to myself. In American culture, I've noticed sort of this undercurrent of if you get sick, it's because you weren't taking care of yourself, or maybe you're not doing something right. And it's not that at all. Illness happens. I didn't think it would happen to me. I never expected that I would be bedridden in my 20s. I had no idea. And certainly I'm not perfect, but I didn't do anything specifically to bring this on myself. It just happened. I take really good care of myself now, and I'm still sick. You know, the fact that I still have chronic illness doesn't mean that I'm not doing the right things, eating the right food, that I haven't tried the right treatments. It just happens to be the reality that I'm experiencing in my body right now. So for me, part of it's healing chronic illness, and the other is redefining wellness. For me, wellness is do I feel open-hearted? Am I able to have contentment or joy? In that sense, right now, I am completely well. So that's the other thing. People look and say, oh, you're disabled. And I'm actually emotional wellness now than I ever had. And that's a result of my physical illness. So I guess that's two things is, to redefine what exactly we choose to see as wellness in society. And to know that if we are sick, it's not about blame.
Absolutely, and that happens here too. You know, they'll look at people who are overweight, and like I just turned on the radio this morning, they were talking about the amount of children who are overweight now, and then they project forward all of these massive, costs that it's going to be for the country, for healthcare, and all of those different sorts of things. So there's almost this blame the person because they must have done something wrong to get sick. And if you're chronically sick, which means, the whole idea of chronic is it's continuing. And people find it really hard to wrap their minds around the idea that, there is such a thing as chronic illness, because most people do still go through their lives and not really talk about it and just soldier on. So, yeah, there is that idea of blame. And I think it can be sort of blame from the society, our society and our culture, but also blame of ourselves, because I think a lot of people can fall into that trap of getting chronically sick and looking back and going, oh my God, why didn't I change my diet? Why did I smoke? Why did I do, you know, all of those different sorts of things? But I think the whole idea is wherever you are, it's really up to you to do what you can to make yourself feel as comfortable and loved and happy and content as you could be. So yeah, you're right. There's people who are chronically ill aren't doing anything wrong. They haven't done anything to deserve it, but they're doing the best they can to live the best they can under, at times, you know, incredibly difficult hardships and situations.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people would find it difficult to have the diet and lifestyle that it is almost necessary when you have chronic illness just to maintain your body. It can be a lot of work. And, you know, just speaking for myself, I take really good care of myself, and I've come to enjoy that. But it is a lot of work. I think that's another thing that people might look at me and say, oh, she's disabled, she doesn't work. No, I do. I work at healing all day.
Exactly. So what changes have you made to your life to help you create better health? And what was the most challenging thing for you to change?
So I kind of did a complete overhaul, but not all at once. I went from, you know, vegetarian to vegan to trying gluten-free, and now I'm on an autoimmune paleo diet. I went from exercising way too much to, you know, being too tired to even get out of bed, to kind of finding where I can take some walks. So my life right now looks so different from my life at, let's say, age 16, when I was a little reckless. But it wasn't like a straight line. It was a lot of trial and error and figuring out what works and forgiving myself if something didn't get the results I was looking for. The biggest change for me has actually been around pacing and mindfulness activities. I used to just jump into my day, stressed out, to-go list, let's do this. And now I wake up and I meditate and I do some gentle stretches and I do some journaling. So my priorities have really shifted more than anything else. I make self-care and the practices that allow me to take care of myself, mind and body, my first priority. That's been very different from how I viewed what it meant to be productive when I was younger.
For sure. And I think a lot of people still seem to think that putting self-care as your priority is selfish. I mean, did you have anyone sort of had that sort of attitude towards what you were doing when you make looking after yourself your priority?
I was my biggest critic about doing that. I felt as a young, so I became disabled right before I married. And I had this idea in my head that I was going to be a certain kind of wife. And I could not maintain that. My health collapsed before the wedding and I was bedridden, completely bedridden. So I was very hard on myself, like, oh, you should pick up the house, or you need to get a job, or you need to cook the food. It was painful to let those expectations go, like just pulling teeth to let those things go. But I came to realize that the best thing I can do for other people is be sane. And when I am giving myself a hard time, when I am irritable and just cranky because I'm pushing myself past my limits, I'm not actually being helpful. When I rest and I'm able to calm down and then be present in an open-hearted way, that's more important than whether or not I vacuumed. I found that to be true.
Mm,
So
absolutely.
yes, to answer your question.
Yeah. Yeah, that must have been so stressful, all of that happening before your wedding. I can't imagine.
Yeah, it was very difficult. I almost had to use the wheelchair to get down the aisle. We postponed the wedding for almost 3 years because I just couldn't even get out of bed, and I wanted to be able to stand in a wedding dress. So very much not something that was planned. And yet the relationship I have with my husband is so strong now because of what we have been through. It's not only my priorities in life that have changed, but his as well. It's not go, go, go for either of us. It's savoring the small things.
And that goes beautifully into the next question, which is, have any of your relationships changed as a result of you becoming chronically ill?
Yes, chronic illness can be incredibly isolating. And before about a year ago, I didn't have home internet. I'm actually pretty sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies. So we were living out in the country, and I didn't have a smartphone or any of the technology that allows people with chronic illness to stay more connected. So that experience was very difficult. Friends that I had didn't come over to visit because they weren't sure how to respond to the state I was in. I've lost some of the relationships I had with family as well. And it was very difficult to have the social interaction that we need in order to thrive. I mean, humans are social creatures. We need that interaction. Nowadays, I found my tribe, so to speak, and being connected with the online chronic illness community has meant so much to me. I'm so grateful to be able to connect with others, even from my home or my bed if I need to. But it definitely has taken a toll on relationships. It's hard to see people when I don't know if I'm going to be well enough that day. I often have to cancel. And sometimes it's hard for other people to understand that that's not personal. It's not that I'm just flaky. My health has ups and downs, and they're unpredictable. The people who have stayed with me, though, over the years, I have one close friend from high school, I have my husband, and I have my little brother. We've become even closer because of it. And the best thing I can hear is somebody who's known me for all these years just say, "Kat, I don't know how you do it. You're amazing. You're an inspiration." Getting that kind of feedback in a relationship is very, very powerful. And I hope everybody can hear that from somebody.
Absolutely. We all need that affirmation, I think. And if you can't get it from other people, the least you can do is give it to yourself. And I think anybody living with chronic illness really needs to give themselves that acknowledgement and validation on a daily basis. Like, wow, you are doing an amazing job. Look at what you're able to achieve with what's available to you. Even if you just got out of bed and made it to the couch, it doesn't matter. You've achieved something. So we really do need that validation, not only from other people, which is wonderful, but more importantly, I think from ourselves on that daily basis, just to remind ourselves that, yep, we're doing the absolute best we can in any given moment that we have.
Yes. In fact, a really good tool that I've used over the years is in the evening, I make a list of the things I accomplished. I used to focus on all the things I didn't do, but now, even if it's just, I put on clean underwear and brush my teeth, I can write that down with like a bunch of stars next to it, like, good job, Kat. And so by focusing on all the little things that I do each day, it's really helped my self-esteem. And I might think that I didn't accomplish much, But then I'll put rested when I needed to rest as something I accomplished. It really changed my perspective.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a big fan of doing that as well, particularly now that I've sort of seemed to have reached a stage in my healing where I can undo a little bit more. Those times when I'm tempted to say, oh my God, I didn't really achieve anything. And so I note everything I do now. So, responded to email. Yes, that was fantastic.
Yes.
It's just whatever I do, I just think, yep, that's fantastic. And just remind myself of all the things that I've done during the day. No matter how big or little that list is, it's still fantastic that I can get things done. So, Kat, out of all the things you've done, which sounds like you've really experimented, you've really been proactive, and you're still looking for any way that you can help that amazing body of yours to heal more. What do you think is the one thing that you've done that's made the biggest difference to how you feel and live now?
Cleaning up my diet had a very large, brain, had made a big difference. I switched to the autoimmune protocol, which is a form of paleo, and that wasn't quite enough. I also did food intolerance testing along with daily food journaling. Between the combination of those three things, I was able to identify which foods do not serve my body, and I removed them. When I was able to do that, I found that I no longer lived with chronic inflammation pain. I no longer had the gastrointestinal issues to the same degree. My sleep improved. I stopped having the anxiety and depression that had always plagued me. So finding a diet that worked for me, and my diet is as unique as I am. It's based off of these other diets that work as good templates, but I've had to modify it a bit. That really was one of those big game changers for me, physically and also emotionally, because I didn't realize how much of my depression and anxiety was the result of food intolerance and chronic inflammation.
For sure. And I think that's something that people don't really understand. The power of what you put into your mouth has on not only on your physical health, but your emotional health and your ability of your brain to function. In new research that's coming out, it's even getting into the wider sort of psychology community, is that there's a new theory of depression, that depression is an inflammatory reaction in the brain, the symptom of which is depressive thinking and depressive thoughts. So I know for myself the profound impact that food has, particularly as I'm doing reintroductions. I know the power of food. So, but it's really something that you're never going to be convinced of until you try it yourself. And I think all I would say, and I'm sure you would agree, is just to anybody who's thinking about it, just try it and see how you feel.
Absolutely. And it's been my personal experience that depression is linked to inflammation as well. If I try a food that does not agree with me, and one of the first symptoms I'll notice is the next 2 days I'll feel more depressed. So food for me can have a very profound and almost immediate response on my mental outlook, as well as physical symptoms like fatigue and aches, etc.
Exactly. So, Kat, if people want to know more about you and what you do, how can they find you?
Well, I blog at hopehealcook.com, where I share my recipes, some of the holistic lifestyle tools I'm using. I also share a number of my comics on the blog as well. And then I am on Instagram and Twitter at Hope Heal Cook, and Facebook at Hope Heal Cook.
Fantastic.
I think that's it.
I really recommend that everybody follow Kat, because she has some amazing recipes and things to share for everybody. So thank you so much, Kat, for talking to me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and talk to you and hear more about your story and your ongoing healing. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I am very grateful to have had this experience and to be able to meet you, and our stories matter. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share.
You're very welcome. And I agree, everybody's story matters. And I think the more of these stories that get shared, then the more somebody's going to find them, and it's going to give them some hope to go on with. So I look forward to seeing you all on the next interview for emotional autoimmunity, and see you next time. Thank you.